It's 5 after the hour. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm so excited to engage with you today. We're going to be talking about transforming your transition, stepping in and out of privilege, and so much more. This presentation to you is brought to you by the Boeing Employee Pride Alliance. Next slide, please. In which, there we go. All right, in which we call BEPA or BEPA, depending on where you're located in the company. BEPA is our Boeing BRG. I hope you got to join our Executive Disruptors panel yesterday. If not, it's definitely one you want to go back and watch. It was a great presentation. My producer for this presentation is Cannell Clark. In case you hear me talking to him throughout the presentation, Cannell, did you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Cannell Clark. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Super excited about our last day of Out and Equal. It's been a wonderful week, but definitely glad for it to be Friday and looking forward to this session, Arrow.
Awesome. Thank you so much. He makes all the magic happen, so thanks for your help, Cannell. All right, so next slide is going to be our brief agenda. So here are all the festivities I have planned for you today. I will do a brief introduction to my story and my experiences, of which they are my own. We'll do some polling to gauge the audience, and hopefully you were able to do that a little earlier today to save us some time. Then we'll jump into our roundtable conversations, do a debrief, and if you have any questions at the end, we'll leave time for that. And if you don't, I've got plenty of throwbacks for you. All right, so next slide. So who am I? My name is Errol Royston. I work in global sales and marketing and proposal production. And what that means is I bring new business to the Boeing company. I am the vice president of BEPA, and I am on the board of directors of the LGBTQ+ advocacy organization. As a lot of you know, the coming out process is hard. Some of us have to come out multiple times as we go through life and discover who we truly are. And for some of us, that process can get really dark. And although each journey and process are our own, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Never in a million years did I think I would be in this moment. Just this time last year, half my ERG colleagues didn't even know I was trans. After a one-on-one talk with a trans man last year at our Out and Equal, I decided to slowly work on coming out. About 4 months later, I came out to the BEPA community. Well, that was easy because half of them already knew and were aware of what being trans was. So that's easier than talking to the general population, right? And I received great support. A couple of months later, my diversity focal says, you know, Arrow, how do you feel about coming out in the Boeing news? I was talking to communications and it sounds like a good idea. I was like, huh? So I gave myself a prep talk. This is something I've been working on, and the opportunity presented itself, so I should take it. Who reads Boeing news anyway? Later that week, the vice president of diversity reaches out to me and says, Arrow, how do you feel about us sharing your story externally on social media? That was one of those moments when you're in mid-sip and you spit out everything that you're drinking. I proceeded to tell her that I'm not really out. And she continues to go on and say, thank you for your vulnerability, for helping others, using your vulnerability to help others. Like I said, yes. But long story short, I met with my team to tell them first before I came out to the world. Then I came out to the world. Go big or go home, right? And it has been something that I've never regretted. And it actually got my grandma to stop praying for me because she read that there was actually a point in my life where I didn't love myself. And that got her to understand my story more. You see, I was living stealth. I transitioned with the group in my company, and I went through all the hard parts with them. And once I fit the part, I got a new job on the other side of campus. My girlfriend and wife at the time, my girlfriend, how do you say that? My wife, girlfriend at the time, decided and I decided that we wouldn't tell anybody unless they had a need to know. Finally, when I looked in the mirror, I saw what I wanted to see. So much that it was painful for me to look back, not realizing in some cases that was considered a privilege to have the option to look back. There were a lot of privileges that I had become accustomed to, such as being instantly respected in a room full of men and groups full of women too. My voice was being heard in meetings. My ideas were being listened to. The odds of me being sexually harassed went to zero. I no longer feared for my safety in groups of men. And best of all, no one looked at me twice when I was in the bathroom. When I tell you, I was the man, I was the man. What time I walked at night didn't matter. I had no fear for my safety, or so I thought. I was showering in all these privileges, male privileges. Then I forgot that I stepped into faded privileges of a black man. I am now a threat when walking at night. When walking at night, it means I'm up to no good. And if the night has a chill and I have the nerve to wear a hoodie, then I fit the description of the nearest petty crime. Now let's fast forward. I'm in a line at a store that is oddly a sponsor of this conference, which we won't talk about. Before COVID shut down the world, I would pick up shifts at a bar at night. After work, I was called in, needed a change of clothes because I was in business attire. So I stopped at a store in a predominantly white area. I stood in line for a pretty long time to pay for a shirt and a pair of jeans. I have a great conversation with the clerk. She flirts with me. Like I said, I am the man. I asked her where the bathroom was and if it was okay for me to go and change my clothes. She responded, sure, people do it all the time. So I'll go to the bathroom and I change. When I step out, the clerk is getting off work. She compliments me on my clothes and says they look great on me. Well, I am the man. When I walked out of the store, she walked out with me. I was immediately greeted by 2 squad cars, 2 officers with their hands on their pistols and loss prevention. Sir, we need to see your bag. Why do you need to see my bag? Why do you have 2 squad cars here? I asked in pure fright. The clerk is still by my side, tells them that I checked out on her line, but they don't want to hear anything she has to say. There's more confrontation and I won't go into details, but that white female clerk stayed by my side until I was done being harassed and walked me to my fancy car, which means nothing, apologizing profusely. She used her privilege to stay and observe the situation, and she stood very close to me. And if she wasn't there, only Lord knows what would have happened to me or how that situation could have ended. She was getting off work. She had worked the whole shift already. She could have been like, shit just got real. Bye. But she stayed, and I'll never forget her. Her name was Donna. That wasn't my first experience like this. It won't be my last. But the weight of many experiences like this are just like coming out stories. All similar and all different. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and 28 trans women of color. If they had a Donna, the chances of them still being alive will be much higher. The LGBT plus community is always calling for allies. Well, now it's our turn. It pains me to know that an oppressed community can still oppress other members within it. The LGBTQ plus community is no stranger to police brutality. In fact, Pride is a commemoration of rioting and protests initiated by trans women of color. Stormy DeLavery threw the first punch. Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick. And Sylvia Rivera led countless protests for LGBT liberation. movement for civil rights. And gender identity protections continue to be left out of most laws because we let city officials think that sexual orientation is good enough. Yet we leave our trans brothers and sisters, especially our sisters of color, still living in a twisted Twilight Zone version of Jim Crow America because they are considered too different. Acknowledging my privileges allows me to become a better ally. It allows me to stick up for that woman's voice and give her the floor in the meeting, to advocate for my trans sisters and brothers and their protection, to advocate for cis women to have a choice over their own bodies. And one thing my wife complains about all the time is the pockets in their jeans. What woman always wants to carry a purse, right? Privilege is not a bad word if we all move as one unit, as human beings that advocate for each other. By acknowledging our privileges, we leverage them to help others that don't have them. Next slide, please. We were supposed to be on this slide already, but that's cool. We'll go to the next one. All right. So if you all, looks like we were doing the polls. I'm looking at the polls right now. Looks like we have answered our polls. So questions for the polls were, how many of you are ERG and BRG members and leaders? 97% of you are, so that's amazing. And then we have 69% of you identify as transgender or non-binary. And most of you are allies to the other letters of LGBTQA and I. So one thing we want to focus on today is basically acknowledging the privileges that we have, and with acknowledging the privileges that we have, and how can we leverage our privileges to advocate for others. And if you go to the next slide, we're going to jump into our first roundtable conversation. We're going to go into different groups. So I know everyone isn't trans, and that's okay. So compare being trans to your coming out story. And, you know, did you lose any privileges when you came out? And our trans members, what privileges have you lost or gained during transitioning? And this will help us identify different privileges that we have. So Canel, if you want to go ahead and throw us in the breakout room.
Sounds good. Here we go, folks.
Right.
Just for an acclimation perspective, once you get into the breakout room, I will post the question again just as a broadcast so you all have the question. Again, we ask that you engage freely. There won't be anyone moderating your breakout. You'll have about 10 minutes. So feel free to just open up your lines, take yourself off mute, and engage in this question about, again, what privileges have you lost or gained after transitioning? We'll talk with you soon. Hi there. Oh, you're on mute there. Might want to unmute yourself. But we are all headed back into the main room now, so folks should be returning shortly. Welcome back, folks. We got folks coming back from all the rooms, so we should all be here rather shortly.
All right. Is there a way you can let me know when people are back in, or do we?
Yes, everyone got kicked out of their breakout rooms, so we are all back and ready to go.
All right, so we're live. I hope that people actually opened up and felt that this was a safe space, and that we can all talk about this openly. So right now I want to invite anyone to come off of mute. I think it works better for Canel if you raise your hand and tell us what was shared or what you shared about privileges you've lost or gained after transitioning. Do we have anybody, or is everybody being shy?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, no, it looks like Linus. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, so there is certainly different types of privilege, both gained and lost, from things like being perceived as younger than the person actually is, to the point of having to get carded for things that would have been a fairly straightforward thing, to gaining the privilege of being, can I carry your bags for you, in the case of a trans woman, kind of thing, by the doorman at her apartment, to, in my case, the realization of privilege when my wife and I she wanted to buy a new car, and the dealer would only talk to me, wouldn't talk to my wife, even though she's the one that's spending the money, and after 3 times of telling him this, I had to walk out, kind of idea, to not being able to be affectionate anymore. As a trans man, I now become a threat, rather than, potentially just a friend, and those types of things. And so, as I said, when I did my little piece, one of the things I think that the cisgendered community really should turn to the trans community is we're very cognitive of privilege, a loss of and gain of. And I think more than anyone, we can certainly speak to the privilege that, white male trans men get, that, trans men of color lose, or I don't know how to put it, because one trans man of color that I know, he had told me his experience of what happened when he transitioned, and he got stopped more often, even though he drives right at the speed limit, kind of thing. And he's a big guy. He's like a big linebacker looking type of thing. To what trans women lose as for their transition, in the sense of, they lose a lot and end up way on the lower end of pay structure, of job opportunities, these types of things. So the idea that white privilege doesn't exist, I will attest the fact it does, without a question. I've experienced it, and I've called it out, and I've said, no, don't talk to me, go talk to this person. They're the expert at it, kind of thing. And the only reason why they came to me was because I was the white guy in the room, So those types of things are definitely out there. And I think as a community, we need to call it out as allies to our cisgendered sisters and brothers, and be able to say, you need to stop that.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I am followed around the casino, and I'm 33, so they follow me around definitely. Canal, you want to spotlight the next person?
Yeah, it looks like we've got Victor Liu.
Yeah, so I was in the same group as Linus. So Linus, thank you very much for summing up a lot of what we had said really nicely. Something that we didn't get around to talking about in our group, but I did want to bring up was, at least for me, in terms of race and gender transition. I was assigned female at birth, but now present on the mask side of non-binary. And I think, especially when it comes to like dating and that kind of thing, like in general, like Asian women are considered some of the most, like, in American society, by like stereotypes, are like considered very attractive, like one of the most attractive demographics, and Asian men are considered one of the least attractive demographics in America. And so I think that that is just really interesting, having like experienced like being on the attractive side of the gender binary and then moving to the like unattractive, undesirable side. Not that I in any way endorse those stereotypes or like buy into them, but just like in terms of how I feel society is perceiving me, and how I feel in terms of like my confidence, in terms of my own attractiveness going out into the dating world.
Yeah,
that's great
perspective. Yeah, definitely unique perspective. Thank you for sharing. And I think we have time for one more share story.
Sounds good. We'll go to Morgan Vergara, please.
Hey, folks. So I had a really interesting experience early on in my gender identity exploration. My wife and I both went out along with some friends to a little bar down in downtown Austin called Cheer Up Charlie's. Great place, very queer friendly, but we had to park a couple of blocks away. So on the way back, I had, at the time, for me, a unique experience. We were walking down the street. There was some construction going on, so the street lights weren't working. I should point out I was presenting female at the time, sorry. But for the very first time in my entire life, I was scared of men on the street. Now, I know a lot of women experience this all the time, and God's above, I am so sorry for that, because for me, it was utterly terrifying. I'd never experienced that. I'd walked down dark streets before, but never as a woman, and never had that fear.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Some things, that's what this is about. You know, some things we take for granted, some things we don't even think about until we're thrown in that position and get to observe from a different perspective. So yeah. Definitely thank you for sharing.
I told my wife and she said, "Oh yeah, that's what I feel like all the time."
Yeah, welcome to my world, right? Awesome. So we're going to move on to the next question. What is trans privilege? Is there such thing as trans privilege, or is it just prejudice in our own communities? And I want you to think long and hard about this. And there's definitely more than two sides to this story. So, Canel, if you want to throw us in the breakout rooms again, and I'm excited to hear what you all have to say.
I will. So, folks, we'll have about 7 or 8 minutes for this one. Again, I encourage you to stay engaged and share your stories, and look forward to hearing a couple folks' stories when we come back to the main room. So here we go.
Jess, thanks for talking.
And we're back.
Is everybody back here? Sorry, I like muted myself, unmuted myself. All right, that was amazing. I hope you guys had as great session as I did. And again, we're going to welcome someone to come off mute and tell us about their experience and what they talked about. Definitely brought some eye-opening things to me as well.
Can I speak? This is Emma
Yeah.
Smith. Hey.
Go ahead, Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Smith. She, her. I worked for Air Products in Pennsylvania, and I've been out and in transition for 3.5 years. I identify as female binary. So we had a great group of folks in our last breakout session, a lot who identify as non-binary, gender fluid, gender expansive. And we were kind of talking about if your identity is on the binary, there is going to be more privilege. There's better developed healthcare and other types of medical care in the companies that do support that. We did talk about how you know, there's sometimes this risk of tokenization. I know that myself and a couple other people in our breakout session were saying that, you know, we being one of the few out trans people in our company, the company is so supportive of us, so we get a lot of good attention, but sometimes it like borders on being tokenized or being patronized. So that could be a risk, but really, you know, I think one of the last things I said in our breakout group was where, as a trans community, we really need to drive a lot of our focus towards supporting people of color, Black and brown folks, as well as the non-binary identities and gender expansive identities, and further towing the line to, or developing healthcare and medical care around those areas, for sure.
I definitely agree. And another thing that was brought up in my session was, you know, actually the access to healthcare to transition is a privilege as well. So definitely thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Sure, thank you.
Canal?
Yeah, looks like next we've got Jess. And I'm not going to butcher your last name, so I'm going to go with Jess.
That's all right, yeah. Scar, but I get why. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, and I hear you, Emma, on that. Like, I love getting to go to lots of galas and balls and things, but I feel a little conscious that I'm always getting a ticket to these things, and like very few other from the company are necessarily getting a participate, even in this. So that there is a risk of that tokenization. I was also thinking, as you were just mentioning, Arrow, about medical transition, there are lots of benefits, and thankfully a lot of companies, especially those here, have increasingly have medical benefits. But even there, often it's to top surgery or bottom surgery, but there, and then maybe like a financial cap or additional amount of money towards other procedures. And so we touched on one of the things that there is sort of that sense of passing privilege and how well you're able to have your body match with what society expects for the gender you're trying to portray. And for some people that can cost, you know, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, facial feminization surgery, hair removal, all those other kinds of things. And so often those benefits are wonderful, but they often are sort of a drop in the bucket towards what a lot of people have to expend if they want to have some of the same status that others that maybe don't have to through a luck of genetics or what have you, or when they chose to transition, not, you know, to start their journey. So that's just a thought too on varying levels of privilege for those of us within the community.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Passing is a privilege. Some people think so, some people don't. But some people like to be non-binary and be that in between, and that's their expression, and that's okay too. So definitely very understandable. Canel, do we have time for one more, or?
Sure. Let's go to Andre Oliveira.
Thank you. One thing that we discussed was privilege is also about circumstance. You know, I'm from Brazil. I'm a transgender, non-binary person, and I live in the country with the highest rate. I thought that about a lot here. I live in the country with the highest rate of murdering of transgender people in Brazil. And it doesn't matter if they are passable or not, they are killed. So far, we have 129 people killed. And they are not taken by face value. It didn't matter if they were passable or not, they were killed for being transgender. It was a hate crime, always. So, and the privileges, we mentioned the privileges of becoming a man, and it's always thin because it's circumstantial, you know. It's always that there's always the risk of losing that once you came out of stealth, or as a black man, you always have the risk of being, even if you're a man, you're a black man, so you're a risk. You're not fully contemplated by the package of privilege. It always come with a cost. So for us, for transgender community, we will never face privilege on the same way, at the same manners. So it's important for us to understand that community is always a way for us to live in security, because individual privilege will not get us through.
And it's important that you said that, and thank you so much. You know, the work that we're doing here, right? The work in racial equity, we're fighting for a world that we won't live to see. So it's important that we do gain a sense of community and that we are allies for other straight, LGBTQ. A lot of times in our different communities, we're not allies to the other communities. So thank you for that. It's something we definitely really need to take to heart. We're going to move on to the next one. And I think it threw us right into that. Thank you so much. Have you used your privilege to advocate for someone? And if so, what was their demographic? And Kanel, take us away.
Thanks, Arrow. Again, this session we're going to have about probably 5 or 6 minutes, because we want to be sure that we have a chance to come back and share with the larger group. And then we've got one more kind of all-inclusive question that we're going to bring to everyone to talk, and we want to leave time for Q&A. So we will break out into those rooms now. Enjoy.
Do you think the remainder were our own breakout group? Is that?
I don't know. I'm just waiting until something. We can just be our own breakout group and then have our conversation yanked in the middle.
Sure.
So there's 12 people left. That's a lot of people. Oh, 11. It's still going down. Who will be yanked?
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Ooh, that was good. I'm learning so much from all of you. Deep. Yeah, so let's go ahead and share. Do you have anyone who wants to come off mute?
I'm not seeing any raised hands just yet. I did see in the chat that Sloan got cut off. I don't know if you want to share, Sloan. If not, Liam has raised a hand.
I can go. So hi, I'm Liam Gent. I work with Erickson. I am transgender man. I've been out for 6 years, on T for 6 years. Just, background on me. But we talked a lot about being able to use our privilege, especially there were a couple of trans men in my group. As trans men, to be seen, right, in especially I was talking about places where I can advocate for transgender women because, maybe a straight white 50-something cisgender male may listen to me because he sees me as male better than he's going to listen to a transgender woman because he sees her as female or he sees her as other, right? Whereas I pass. Right, and that privilege, I use that privilege to advocate for my trans sisters quite often and for my non-binary siblings. And then also, I've spent years working on ally stuff, and we talked about how important allies are as well, to making sure that and that we can all be allies to each other, that we are all allies, need to be allies to each other, is incredibly important.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And I've noticed that as well. Being able to relate to cisgender men more and be an advocate for trans women.
That's great. Next, we've got Mallory Schneider.
Hello, Mallory.
Yeah, I thought that it was kind of interesting not to necessarily talk about how I've been an advocate for someone else, but how someone was kind of a very surprising advocate for myself when coming out at work. And so my current boss, I work for Deloitte & Touche, so it's largely project-based, but my coach counselor, and I work on a lot of projects with him, I was just absolutely certain he was going to be all thumbs when it came to tell him that, I'm a woman and I'm transgender and I'm interested in transitioning on the job and coming to work as myself. And when I told him over lunch, and this was relatively recently, back in February, end of January, he was immediately just like, okay, this is great. What can I do to help you? Who do you need to talk to? How do we do this? And not knowing anyone myself in the office or even in my portion of the firm that was transgender themselves at the time, of like totally helped me navigate all of coming out to the office and working with every client that I was served, to like meet with the people to help communicate to them of like, this is what's happening on the team, and helping getting in touch with overall up and up leadership to have them help communicate the message from the top down. And then for me to come back over the top of that and just say, hey, this is me, I'm Mallory, this is how I'd like you to refer to me, this is what the changes you're going to see. There's nothing else, that type of stuff. And I was just totally blown away. And all of this right around a really critical, very, very busy, stressful time of year that he took the time out of his schedule to step in and be an extremely beneficial advocate for me.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing, because, it's great to know who helps us in our journey as well. I think we have one more.
We do, and that was great. We never hear the other side, like a positive side of these stories, So thanks for sharing, Mallory. The last and final person we've got is Robin Zollner. Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin. I use he, him. I work in a really, really good environment, and I was able to come into my workplace sort of midway in transition, where like I have been on some hormones for some of the time, but I don't fully pass. And I certainly have not had every medical operation I plan on having. And my manager, my first line manager, has been really, really supportive of letting me take the lead as to how I want to play this, given that I did not want to be the hyper visible trans person on my team, also being the new one, also being the young one, also having weird skills that are unrelated, that are different than what my team has. And I really liked this. Now, about the time of the George Floyd murders and when the Black Lives Matter was really starting to come into the media cycle, this manager pulled me aside and asked me what action should she be taking as a leader in the LGBT group, ERG, locally, to support Black Lives Matter. And I, as a masculine presenting white person, was able to tell my manager, who's also white, also queer, actually, please just hang back. Don't jump in and do anything. Wait for our Black Employee Resource Group to take a stand and let them advocate for themselves, and just listen to what they want you to do and do the education yourself. Don't jump in and making and doing actions and making this about you, because this is not about you. And I thought it was really positive, because it's like, I had to remind her that it was, remember when you let me take the lead on my own story, let the Black employees in our organization take the lead on their story.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you shared that, because we had a similar thing at Boeing. When Pride started, we were going into June, right? We were all excited. We had everything ready to launch on day one, you know? And the George Floyd thing happened right before, right? So, you know, we hung back. We didn't boast about Pride and it's June. Our country was in turmoil. Our Black employees were hurting. Our LGBTQ Black employees were hurting. Like, the beautiful part about the LGBT community is that we're comprised of every ethnicity, every disability, every other ERG. We're comprised of it, right? So we hung back and we put out messaging that says we stand with the Black community. We stand with our Black ERG. And we sat back. We didn't celebrate Pride Month till about maybe the second half of the second weekend. So that's very important, and thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. We want to go on to the next one. And I mean, Jesus, you guys are good. It's like you guys are like leading into every question. I don't even have to be here. Like, you guys can do this by yourself. So how does intersectionality affect allyship? We just rolled right into it. So who else wants to just lead it? Does anybody want to take this? This one we're going to do as a group, as a whole. And I'm curious to see, you know, how you guys think. I'm learning so much from you. And you can raise your hand, or you can just come off mute and speak.
Jessica, go right ahead.
I mean, it's vital. It's necessary. If you're not being intersectional, you're not an effective ally, period. You know, we talked earlier about privilege and, you know, the various privileges we gain or give up. But, you know, for someone like me, I haven't lost my white privilege, despite anything else I may have lost. And if I'm not speaking, or more to the point, if I'm not lifting BIPOC voices, what the hell am I doing?
Thank you. Thank you. Did anybody else want to go?
Yeah, I can go.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's key. I think it's the biggest piece to the puzzle. I think it's the building of coalitions that's gonna be what is the movement that moves the ball across the finish line, right? Like it's if we band together by all of the different groups and we start banding together, it's how we become the majority and affect change for everyone.
Yeah, and
No, I
I think it's
that's
great that you said that, because that kind of gave me like a weird thing, like with the term POC, right? People of color. At one point, I feel like it takes my blackness away and puts me into a group of people, but at the same time, it also embodies a group of people to not be a minority, but more of a majority. So it kind of hit me like two ways. And Ryan, since you spoke, I don't know if anyone has their hand up, but if you don't mind, could you talk about a little bit what you talked about in our breakout about, kind of feeling like you were raised in a cult just because, being a cis straight white male? Do you feel comfortable talking about that? Because I think that was a great point that people need to hear.
Sure, I'll try to stumble upon it again. It's essentially just I've been reflecting on a lot of different allyship / like supporting role in being that agent of change. And honestly, like as I've educated myself over time, it's realizing how many how much wool has really been pulled over my eyes, and realizing how hard it is to see that, and not having a gauge for what is real, and the struggles of other communities, and without being in those communities, it's hard to see the truth of that. And honestly, I grew up in Northwest Washington State, and it's pretty white here. So having Black friends even is hard to have because they're not there, right? So like you can't have that experience with Black people. So so it's hard to share their experiences and share their understanding of the world. And I've had some very meaningful relationships with neighbors that have moved in, and having a Black neighbor move in, and he shared with me his experiences of things, and it really opened my eyes, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me that I'm glad I took the opportunity to do and build a friendship with. And I've had experiences with with LGBT friends, and getting to learn their life a little bit better, and just sharing that has been it's been illuminating. But it's also so weird just growing up in that cult where everything is so whitewashed, so hidden, so blanketed, and you don't even know that there's a resource to go to. So I've been drabbling on for a long time. I'll go back on mute now.
No, thanks for sharing. I do appreciate it. I think we've got one more raised hand.
We do. Jane Doe, you're up.
Okay, so this is more amusing than anything. It's around intersectionality is covering, by definition, everything, and that you encounter with bureaucracy, for one thing, is size. And for me, there's that sort of niggling little worry in the back of my head that if you get a complete intersectional diversity with every person having a stake on the table is that you argue over the small issues and you never make progress over the big issues in general. And I wonder if that's going to be one of the challenges that ends up getting brought into focus. And why at the moment, a lot of groups have split themselves out into, these are groups for trans issues, ERGs for trans issues, ERGs for BIPOC issues, ERGs for et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on, and the minorities get more minor and minor and minor in terms of representation. So it's not so much a point, it's more just a thing that the question sort of raises.
Yeah, and I can actually speak to that. So my opinion, this is not a professional, is that, you know, your populations pull themselves out, right? Because no one is advocating for that group. So they have to advocate for themselves. So just in all human beings, right? That's why we have different races who advocate for their race and things like that, because that's the group that cares and advocates for them, instead of us all coming together as humans and advocating for each other. So looking at laws and legislation and things like that, and I said, how does this affect people? Not white people, black people, poor people, rich people, people. And, you know, how does this affect people? And as we start to wind down and come towards the end of time, I just want to say, like, acknowledging your privilege is a big deal, right? So you can use your privilege to advocate for other people, and in advocating, the best way to do that is to vote, right? But what people do is they vote towards their privilege, right? So if you are advocating as a human being, you should be voting what's best for people. So one thing that I want you guys to think about when you vote, and please vote, oh my God, and if you're a person of color, please vote, because so many people died for you to have that right. And I cannot stress this enough. So many people, if you're a woman, you need to vote. People fought for you to have that right. That is your human right, your American citizen right to vote. Please exercise it. And when you're exercising it, vote for people, humanity, what's best for people. Don't vote for your privilege. You already got that. You already got it. And now what I'm going to do is go into the debrief round. And what we want everybody to do, raise your hand, and I want you to come off mute and say, what did you notice and what did you learn? Or what did you notice or what did you learn? And I know we had a lot of allies on the call, so I'm curious to know what you all think, what you all learned, and I'll let Kanel take it on out.
Perfect. So for those of you that have maybe never done this format, this is a new meeting format that we've been launching at Boeing, by where we start every meeting with a check-in round. So we give everyone the opportunity to kind of transition from the last 5,000 calls you were on and really get focused on the call that we're in today. And then at the end of every meeting, we do what is basically called a checkout, which is really just kind of really, again, resonating with folks. And we typically use the questions of what did you notice or what did you learn? What we'll typically do is ask folks to get involved in the chat and do that. Otherwise, then the facilitator will typically just randomly go and call on people throughout the chat. So it really is something as a facilitator I love to do, because it just gets people engaged and you never know when you're going to hear your name, right? So I would invite everyone to use the chat now to just comment on what you noticed and what did you learn. And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to start putting those in, and I'm randomly just going to go call on folks throughout our chat in order to share with the group. Again, what did you notice? And what did you learn? And I think the first person we'll go to is Katie Toole. What did you notice? What did you learn? And you'll probably want to come off mute. Katie, are you out there? All right. I'm going to go to Dora Beyer. What did you notice? What did you learn?
You caught me before I could think of my answer.
Okay.
Can you come back to me? Give me
I
another
can
moment.
do that.
Thank you.
I can do that. No worries. Let's go to Steffi Elms. What did you notice? What did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a real eye opener, and thank you so much for sharing your story, your personal story. It continuously, as a white trans woman, it continuously shocks me, as a European, the stories that I hear coming from the US, of the oppression of people of color. Yes, it happens over here as well, but it's truly shocking what we've seen occurring in the US this year. So again, thanks for sharing your story. But for me, this session's really opened my eyes on how I can use my fame or even infamy inside my company as one of the few transgender women who are openly out there in the company to advocate for the rights of the entire LGBTIQ community, and to help everybody out there. And really, thanks for this session. It's been great for me.
Excellent. I'm gonna grab two more. Let's go to Arthur Fuller. What did you notice? What did you learn?
Hi, everyone. I feel like I first off noticed that a lot of us are kind of shy and didn't want to be the first one to speak up in our breakout rooms.
Right.
Beyond that, I feel like I heard a lot of people talking about how they feel like they're, the one of maybe two people at their company, who's trans and has this experience, and how I feel like the thing that I noticed, the thing I'm getting at, is just how powerful it is for a big group of us to come together and talk to each other and realize the similarities of sort of what we're going through. Because I feel like a lot of the times when we're involved in our LGBTQ plus ERGs, the T sort of gets lost a lot. And a lot of the times we're either tokenized or we're sort of focusing more on the LGB side of things. And it's important for us to advocate for that, but also advocate for ourselves and the people in our companies that we don't see, because someone in my group talked about how, she was one of two trans women at her company, but statistically there have to be more. And so I think it's really important for us to sort of learn from each other and figure out how to support those people as well.
No, that's great. All right, final one, Dora, I'm coming back to you.
Okay. I think I'm realizing that over the last few years, maybe 10 plus years, I'm seeing more people open to just asking questions and accepting how someone identifies, as opposed to labeling them on their behalf. And we obviously still have a long way to go, but as a cisgendered woman, I present as female, as a woman, I haven't really thought about my privileges as much. As a first generation person here, an immigrant, daughter of Mexican immigrants here, I think that I have been pushed in this conference to think about what privileges I still have and what capacity I have to be much more of an ally. And part of that is to make sure that I'm always asking questions and not assuming how someone identifies. And I really appreciate, I think I learned that more in my college years back in about 2004. And I love seeing an entire conference where we can all present with that first and inform others how we identify, as opposed to that being an assumption. And I really want to carry that forward to always be an opportunity that we give everyone, no matter the setting.
No, that is perfect, Dora. Thank you so much for sharing, and glad that you were able to attend the conference this year and kind of experience that. Errol, I'll turn it back to you. We're a minute over, but if you want to close out for us, that'd be great.
Hey, you guys closed out great enough for me. I appreciate everybody who joined in. I appreciate your perspectives, and I appreciate you. And I'm giving you the power to take your privilege forward. No matter what it is, everybody has some form of it. Pass it on, man. Pass it forward. I love you all. Hey, Kanel, can we collect the chat?
Duh. I got it.
Love ya.
All right. I'll call you back. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.